How's it going, everyone? Welcome to my channel and welcome to my God of War Ragnarok review. Now before we jump into it, I just wanted to say that there are no spoilers in this video. Any gameplay you see in the background is from very early on in the game, and I'm not going to be talking about any story specific details. So if you're worried about spoilers, don't worry, you're not going to find any in this video. And then the next thing I want to talk about before I jump into it is that there is still time to join my God of War Ragnarok giveaway. If you want the chance to win yourself a copy of God of War Ragnarok, all you have to do is be a subscriber of the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and then follow the link down in the description down below. Now this review is going to be a little bit different than most reviews out there. This is going to be completely unscripted, and it's just going to be me giving my thoughts on my overall experience playing the game. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this right at the beginning, that I think God of War Ragnarok is an absolute masterpiece. This game, after just beating it last night on my birthday of all days, which by the way was a great birthday present, this game is now my #1 favorite video game of all time that I have ever played. Now the old title used to belong to Skyrim, and it's held that spot since 2011. I loved and played the crap out of Skyrim. And not only did it beat out Skyrim, it also beat out some of my other favorite games like the Mass Effect trilogy, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us Part 1, like it had some pretty steep competition. I've played a lot of video games. And after beating the story, this game is so unbelievably good, and it checks so many of my personal boxes for things that I'm looking for in a video game that it now has dethroned Skyrim, and it's now my favorite video game of all time. If you guys loved God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok takes everything that was good in God of War 2018 and cranks it up to 11. The storytelling, the combat, the enemies, the humor, the character development, everything that you could have liked about God of War 2018 is amplified and better in God of War Ragnarok. For example, with God of War 2018, I gave that game a 9 out of 10, and one of my complaints was that a lot of the enemy types just felt a little repetitive, and a lot of the mini-bosses were just kind of the same mini-boss, and it got kind of old after like 5 or 6 of the same mini-boss. Well, in God of War Ragnarok, they took that criticism and they took it to heart, because there are so many different types of enemies in this game that I was like 40 hours into the game and I was still seeing new enemy types that I've never encountered before. And then when it comes to mini-bosses, they really went crazy with the mini-bosses. There are so many different mini-bosses. In God of War 2018, it felt like I was fighting one of those like fire giants or frost giants over and over and over. Well, in this game, it feels like there's probably 20 plus different types of mini-bosses, and all of them play differently, and they all have their own unique abilities and combo moves, and it's just, there's so many mini-bosses outside of the main bosses. You know, if you're just a fan of boss fights in video games, then this game is definitely not going to disappoint. Some of the side mini-bosses that you encounter out in the open world, you will encounter some repeat mini-bosses, but it's not nearly as bad as what it was in God of War 2018. So all the enemy types and the bosses and the mini-bosses, I'm giving like a 10 out of 10. I love all the different variations of enemies. And then when it comes to the combat and the new skills and all the different abilities and stuff, like they nailed the combat in this game. If you enjoyed the combat in God of War 2018, you're going to love the combat in God of War Ragnarok. Very early on, it was a bit overwhelming with just how many abilities that you have at your disposal. I'll be honest, I was kind of just sticking with like 1 or 2 abilities, and I was just using them over and over and over again. But as you keep playing the game and you look at the skill tree and you take your time and you read what each ability does, and once you learn all the individual different combos, especially if you're the type of player that likes to switch between your weapons mid-combat, there are some really nasty combos you can pull off using both weapons in tandem with one another. And the combat just continuously evolves throughout the entire game. There wasn't at any point where I felt like I was at a standstill when it came to combat. Throughout the entire story, I was constantly learning new abilities and more skills and continuously just improving on my combat abilities as the game progressed. And I feel like they did a really good job of balancing the combat and the amount of XP you get in comparison to other video games. So they just absolutely nailed the combat. But next, let's talk about performance and bugs and glitches and stuff. Now, I had like close to no performance issues whatsoever. This is a very polished game. And there was only one glitch that I encountered throughout my playthrough, and it was this weird glitch where my controller would desync itself from the gameplay, and like my buttons were like delayed from what was happening on screen, and the only way I could fix it was like if I paused the game or reloaded the checkpoint And it only happens with this game. My controller doesn't have stick drift or anything, so it wasn't a drift issue. It was just somehow getting desynced from the gameplay, and I don't know what was going on with that. And I had that reoccurring glitch maybe like 20 plus times throughout my 50 hours. It wasn't a major issue, it was just more of an annoyance, which I'm sure they could probably find a way to fix this in like a patch or something. So I had close to no performance issues throughout my entire playthrough, which is another thing that just doesn't happen in modern video games anymore. There's so many games that just get released unfinished with the promise to fix it later that I'm just not used to a game releasing actually finished and bug-free. So next up, let's talk about the story. Like I said, don't worry, I'm not talking about anything spoiler related to the story, but I just want to talk about how good the story was. Now, this game is massive. I watched a couple of other reviews on YouTube, and a lot of people were saying it takes about like 35 to 40 hours to beat the story, and I don't know how they could have possibly done that unless they put it on a very easy difficulty and they avoided all the side objectives, because it took me easily 50 plus hours to get around to beating the story. Now, I did do some of the side stuff. There's still a lot of side objectives that I'm going to have to go back and try to accomplish, but with the main story, every time I felt like I was maybe like the halfway point of the game, it just kept going and going and going. But with most video games, you normally just have this instinct or this feel of like, I'm at the halfway point or things are getting close to the end. Well, with God of War Ragnarok, every time I felt like I was maybe halfway done beating the game, I was maybe 1/4 of the way done with the game. There is just so much stuff to do and explore, and the story is phenomenal. It's one of the best written stories I have ever experienced in any form of media, like movies, TV shows, video games. Like, it's top tier. The writers for this game absolutely nailed it, and after playing this one, it makes me want to go back and play God of War 2018. That's how good this game is. The writing and lore is so well intertwined with the previous game, and after beating God of War 2018, I had an idea going into God of War Ragnarok of what I thought might happen, and this game subverts your expectations so many different ways. Anytime I thought something was going to happen or I knew the direction the game was going to go in, they would hit me with a plot twist and completely throw me off. Any expectations you have from God of War 2018 going into God of War Ragnarok, throw them completely out the window, because this game is nuts. The story is just phenomenal, and I just cannot wait to play this game again. That is a good way for me to determine just how much I love a game, is if I'm willing to play the single player game a second or a third time. Now, the Mass Effect trilogy, I've played that through like 3 or 4 times already. Skyrim, I've played Skyrim at least 4 to 5 times with mods, without mods. With God of War Ragnarok, there's so much replayability because there are so many different builds you can have for your character. I'm not sure if there's a New Game Plus or if they're going to add a New Game Plus at some point, but there is just so much unlimited potential. You could play this game 5 times in a row and have a completely different build setup every time you play through the game. So there is a ton of replayability for God of War Ragnarok, and I am 100% going to replay this game as soon as I get the opportunity, and I can't speak more highly on this game. It is now my favorite video game of all time, and especially in this day and age where we get just battle passes and live service promises and unfinished games at release. In modern gaming, they don't care about stories. They just want your money. That's all it is. And with Santa Monica Studios, they wanted to tell a story, and I think the money will follow. Like, I cannot believe that my new all-time favorite video game was a game released in 2022. I didn't think that was possible. I thought we were past the day and age where we had good video games that told good stories, and you know, we were just in the time of microtransactions and false promises. So yeah, I cannot recommend this game enough. This is my all-time favorite video game that I have ever played, and I really cannot wait for you guys to get your hands on it, because you are going to love every second of it. But those are my thoughts on God of War Ragnarok. This has been my review. If you guys enjoyed it, then please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting the subscribe button. I'm going to have tons of guides and tips and tricks and all kinds of different videos to help you guys out when the game releases. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell for notifications. And that is going to do it for me, everyone, and I will talk to you all in the next video.